Hello everybody and welcome to episode 7 of 5 Red Lights. I'm Anthony Scattergood and I'm here with Nathan.
Hello.
Hello. So we will kick it off with our race review of the Italian Grand Prix. Hamilton is triumphant. Finally got his win. It's been quite a while for him.
Yeah, the last win I got to see live at Britain. So hey,
yeah.
But I didn't get to see this one. Very sad. But yeah, it was a great race from Lewis. I think I tweeted after the race I have to knock a couple points off for that start, but otherwise.
Yeah, but I don't think the start was his fault. That was just one of those.
Well, I thought it was a very loose mentality because he basically said this was just an extra part of the system, and he still could have had a good start, but he decided to make up for it. He was just going to floor it, and then it was the wheel spin he got that gave him a horrendous start. So instead of thinking, "Oh, I'll just lose to Rosberg and probably go second," he thought, "I'm just going to floor it and hope something happens."
But the positive for him is he had a bad start and he still managed to win it, and I think that will probably be a big boost for him.
Yeah, this was the first time, it's probably since China, that he was definitely faster than Rosberg in a race. You know, where it wasn't they were relatively matched. It was clear a couple of tenths every lap.
Well, we saw it in qualifying, didn't we? And Hamilton's first run was so much faster in Q1. He just Q3, sorry. And if he'd have probably got that final lap sorted, he'd probably been another 2 tenths quicker, I think.
Indeed, but what's probably the bigger story than Lewis' greatness in the race is Rosberg's struggles, which we don't know what would happen at the end. Lewis is catching Rosberg, but it was definitely Rosberg's mistakes that did give Lewis the win that he got.
Yeah, I mean it was a very strange one because both times it happened in the exact same place. And I know there's people speculating out there that it's Mercedes team orders, but I think it's bull.
I really don't understand that at all. It makes no. That for me is just people trying to make a story out of nothing. It's just I think the more interesting story is that Rosberg he mentally cracked for the
And I think that's naturally going to happen because he's never really been in a championship fight before. Fair enough, the first half of this season has been fairly straightforward for him because he's very good at putting the championship fight out of his mindset, but it's getting to that last half of the year and it's starting to creep up in his mind, and he knows that Hamilton is really fighting for him. So I think we saw in Italy him finally starting to struggle as far as fighting for this championship.
Yes, indeed.
So our next topic is Massa finally gets a podium.
Hooray!
Yay!
My mother was thrilled. She's a big Massa fan from back in the day, so she was very happy ringing me up afterwards. But
I think it was much deserved. I think it's been a tough season for him. He's been very unlucky in getting caught up in lots of incidents and stuff like that. But sometimes you just get them seasons. But it's just, for me, I mean, it's nice to see that he still has the pace there. And, yeah.
I think what was truly amazing was I think he's only been on the podium here once before, which was staggering to hear.
Yeah.
You would have thought, Ferrari's home grounds, and I always have thought he's always done well there. He's out-qualified Alonso a couple of times, so it was a bit surprised that this is only second podium. But yeah, really, really great to see.
Yeah, and you really felt the support for the fans for him, which was nice.
Once a Ferrari driver, always a Ferrari driver.
Exactly.
Well, Massa got a great reception on the podium, but not as much as Spa, but there was a bit of booing from Rosberg on the podium. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of slightly going back to Vettel last year. It hasn't got to that level of booing yet.
No.
But,
I mean, I thought it was unfair after Spa, but I can understand sort of the fans, the emotional fans back then, because it was fresh on the mind and it only just happened. But it's a bit more premeditated when it's the the race after, and I think it's a bit unfair.
But it's really amazing. Like, you compare what Rosberg did to, like, Schumacher taking out Damon, Schumacher trying to take out Villeneuve, Schumacher parking his car to block Alonso in Monaco, or, you know, Senna smashing Prost off in Japan. You know, you compare it to those incidents, it's nowhere near on that level, and we don't have footage of these guys getting booed on the podium.
Exactly.
So, I think it's all being completely blown out of proportion, and, I mean, we're going to discuss it later, but I think it's really disrespectful.
Agreed. So moving on to our weekly news. Big news on the Ferrari front. Montezemolo leaves. This is huge.
This is huge. I mean, Montezemolo has been in charge for 23 years. I mean, he's basically been in charge pretty much since Enzo Ferrari died, a couple of years afterwards. You know, this guy, you know, he's a long history. He organised the 1990 World Cup. He led Ferrari through their most successful period ever in the Schumacher era, and now he's gone.
I mean, I can understand from Ferrari's perspective. Obviously, he had that dominant period, and now, you know, Ferrari aren't really fighting where they should be. I mean, everyone loves to see the red cars towards the front of the pack. And it's the same situation with McLaren. These last few years, they've really struggled, and they've been very lucky to have Alonso to put that car further forward than it should be. Because at the moment, well, even for the last few years, that car has just not been a title competitor.
Well, what's really interesting is people think of Ferrari as like one of those independent racing teams, like a Williams or a McLaren. But what this has really reminds everyone is that they are really like a manufacturer in that they're owned by Fiat. And it's Fiat who's made this decision. And what's interesting is Ferrari sales have been better than ever the past few years, especially in America and Asia. They're having massive growth. So Ferrari, the company, is doing better than ever. So the sole reason for this firing is the Formula One. And the president of Fiat was saying, like, yeah, we know Ferrari, the sales are brilliant, but Ferrari is about the image. And if Ferrari aren't winning, then that image is gone.
Which I think is true. Like I said, we've all grown to expect Ferrari to be fighting at the front, and like I said, we haven't really seen that, especially this year, where, you know, they still haven't won a race yet, and there's not many races left. And the last time they didn't get any wins in a season was back in 1993. So.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, Ferrari, there are some positives. I think they've just been making the same mistakes over the past so many years. I was telling you earlier they had a chance to sign the head of engine development from Mercedes before Dominicali was fired. And then when Dominicali was fired, he refused to join them. And they had a similar chance to sign Bob Bell. But, you know, I think Matty, actually, I think he's a great guy, and I think he's going to do great work. And he's really just backing James Allison fully. Like, he's saying, like, don't worry, you're not in trouble. You've just got here. We're going to back you completely. So hopefully they'll be able to give Alonso and Kimi, and then whoever replaces Kimi in the future, cars worthy of them.
Well, hopeful thinking, yeah.
Hopeful indeed. Well, speaking of Ferrari, Michael Schumacher finally has left the hospital. I actually thought he left the hospital a couple months ago, but apparently not.
No.
And sadly, it looks like there's a long, long road to recovery for him.
I mean, I think that's fully expected. I mean, if you remember when Richard Hammond had his head injury, and it took a couple of years, I think, for him to properly come, you know, back to doing his work. So I expect it'll be, you know, quite a while, and it depends how. I mean, the damage seemed more severe than like in Richard Hammond's case, and so it's very likely he'll be out for a while before he's fully back to normal.
I don't know if he will be fully back to normal though, because when you're sometimes when you like Hammond was out for like a short-ish period of time, like it was a horrendous accident, but Schumacher was, you know, he was out for a good few months, and I really wonder if there's been some serious brain damage, which I really hope not, but I think that's probably likely, which would be a real shame.
Yeah, it would be. It would be. But at least he's out, at least he's at home, so obviously he's in a safe place. Obviously it's just now the road to recovery.
Yes, indeed.
So next up is good news for Williams. They've confirmed their driver lineup for 2015, and guess what? It's Bottas and Massa.
Yes, who would have thought? I think there was a bit of question about Massa because while he's not been at fault for the incidents he's been in, whenever you get into that many incidents, I mean, I don't know, some of them like Germany, it's a bit like, well, why would you put your car there, sort of thing. You know, it's like you're really putting your car in a position to be hit. Obviously, something like Australia, you can't help that at all. But you know, they confirmed him, and then he goes gets a podium, so that's pretty good for them. And you know, Bottas, I mean, you know, if it wasn't for Ricciardo this season, Bottas would be the story of the season.
Yeah. Well, I think Massa will probably come on stronger next year. Hopefully he'll have a clean season, and you know, he'll give Bottas a bit of a run for his money. Cause it'd be nice to see them fighting it out between themselves a bit more. Because I think we've missed that slightly this year.
Yeah, I just think that you know, Massa has still got the qualifying pace, which we saw a bit of Ferrari still last year. But I mean, he just seems to still slightly lack something compared to Bottas in the race pace. So I think that Bottas will have him covered next year. Bottas is only going to get better, really.
Yeah.
But I really hope Massa has a better year next year because I think it'll probably be his last year as well before he retires. So, well, we need to send him off with a bang.
Exactly.
Well, final bit of news this week. This literally came just after the race. Christian Albers resigns after less than 2 months in charge.
I can't believe it. I mean, Caterham are trying to get themselves back on track, and now this happens. It's just like it's never-ending problems for them, really, and they still got this lawsuit going through. It's not good.
Well, basically, Albers, a lot of this money that was supposed to come in from these new investors, basically a lot of it was, you know, smoke and mirrors, and he had been promised all this stuff and he wasn't going to get it, so he just decided that, you know, if there was no point working with people who were lying with him, and it would give him a much tougher job to do. So, I mean, I don't blame him at all. I would not want that role either.
Exactly. It's not worth the hassle, but that's the problem. Is if these are the people who've taken over Caterham, then what's their future? Because I've got a feeling it's pretty short.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so moving on to our discussion point of the week. Do fans not appreciate the job drivers have to do?
I'm gonna go with no.
Yeah, I mean this is quite topical with the whole booing of Rosberg, but then we had
the signing of Verstappen. I was going to say.
Oh, the signing of Verstappen as well. But obviously, you know, as far as booing, we had Vettel pretty much all of last season getting booed on the podium, and yeah, I think fans do underappreciate what they do, and even if you don't think Vettel is the best driver on the grid, he has won the race. Even if he has got he's privileged with a good car, he has won the race, and it does take a lot to win a race, and it takes a lot to win a championship as well.
Well, I would say with Vettel, like, maybe I'd prefer if 2 of his championships had probably gone to Alonso, like 10, or maybe 10 had gone to Webber and 12 had gone to Alonso. I don't really think he drove brilliantly those 2 years. But 11 to 13, like, as Christian Horner said, Matt Webber was one of the best drivers in the world. He wasn't like the best of the best, but he was, an amazing driver who spent a long time in Formula One. And Vettel in 11 and 13 crushed him. Just absolutely crushed him. So Vettel has to have a lot of talent to do that. And, I think people every driver can have a not great season. And also Vettel went into the season just having had a kid, and he's, having to deal with not having a car he's used to. And you can see how many times in other sports how changes in relationship and changes in situation can really affect a driver. So I think next year we're going to see a closer fight between the two. But I think this whole booing thing is just... I think it's terrible. I think that it is such a tough job to drive these cars, and You know, even if you're Adrian Sutil, you know, clearly not the best, but a decent driver, like, you have a really hard job to do that very few people in the world can do.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's completely unfair. I mean, at the start of the season, no one would have dared boo Rosberg. Everyone loved Rosberg. And it's just because of these things that have happened, and like I said, it's not none of it was done with malicious intent. But now he's getting booed, and like I said, as I said before, I can understand them doing it in Spa because it was fresh on the mind. Everyone was a bit emotional about what had happened, so I can kind of understand it. I still don't think it was right, but I can understand it. Whereas in Monza, there was no reason. Rosberg had apologised. It took him a while. Don't get me wrong, but he had apologised. So what else can Rosberg do to get the fans' appreciation again? I mean,
well, I mean, as I think I said a couple weeks ago on this show, like, I think it was 89 British Grand Prix, but it might have been 88, so don't quote me on that. Senna was running second behind Prost with Mansell third, and he crashed out of the race in Silverstone. And the crowd, they love Mansell, but they also really love Prost. Prost won the British Grand Prix 6 times. Senna never won it. The only race he won in Britain was the European at Donington. And, people nowadays, they all talk about how everyone loves Senna and, how he's amazing. But a lot of that really came after his death. He was very diversive, and the fans booed him as he was getting out of his car. Like, they were booing and booing. And when Mansell and Prost were on the podium, they were cheering them. And, you look back at that footage, and that's not right. You should be cheering all three of them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this could easily I mean, I think as well it's a bit hypocritical, because I think Lewis has also done some stuff in his career that has probably been worse than this, and he hasn't got booed for it. But I think he was looking that he didn't do it in the championship battle a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it seems that when you're in a championship battle, like Vettel last year, you do something, it's just magnified for some reason because it's for the championship. Whereas if you're over like 4th or 5th place in the championship, it doesn't seem to matter as much.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and this kind of links into the whole team orders thing, is that everyone wants a fair battle for the championship. You've got 2 people fighting for it. Every point counts. So a move like that kind of puts a possible end to the championship. Like, I mean,
possible, but not to. I may hate double points, but double points does actually leave a lot open.
It does, and it makes me fearful for the last race, because I don't want.
But why are you fearful? Because they couldn't have picked a better track for Hamilton, in a way. I mean, Abu Dhabi is like the Hamilton stomping grounds.
It's not. Like, I'm not fearful for that. I just don't think it's right. I think
you're worried a situation where one of the cars fails and one finishes.
I'm worried that last race, because of the double points, is going to be the decider. And that idea, even if, because there's 14 points to gain from first to second, isn't there?
Yeah.
So let's say Hamilton is 13 points behind Rosberg in that race and then finishing first. As much as I want Hamilton to win the championship, I still don't think that's fair.
No, I don't think it's fair. And, I think on the F1 show they were saying to people, like, will you be okay with double points if it gives Hamilton the championship? Like, basically, if a normal point situation wouldn't give it him if he won, say, and then double point. I still think it's wrong. I think that's not a genuine championship win. I think it's... I don't know, but we've had these stupid rules before in F1, like in 88, where we said the best 11 results count. The 16 races, your best 11 counts. What a stupid rule that was!
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think as well that Jody Scheckter said something where he said, you guys have all these devices where you slow things down and pause them in milliseconds, and he's like, these guys are going 150 whatever miles per hour, and they have to make split-second decisions, and slight mistakes will happen. And what Rosberg did was a slight mistake, and it wasn't entirely his fault either. Like, but I mean, how many people can do this really? And we give them criticism because they make one tiny mistake. Don't think it's very fair.
No, it's not. I mean, you got to think the things that are running through their minds while they're racing. I mean, they've got to think about gear changes, about clutch, about seeing the red lights for the gears. They've got to think about DRS. They've got to curves. Well, maybe not quite curves this year, but
tyre wear, fuel.
There's so much going through your mind, and you're going side by side with someone into a corner.
That's another thing about the Rosberg thing this weekend with him missing the turn one. Like, twice was a bit unusual. But I was thinking, like, it's weird that we don't see more people doing that, because that's a tough braking point.
Yeah, it really is.
And in practice, you see them do it all the time.
And I believe Rosberg, when he says, is that he could have made that corner, but he would have wrecked his tyres. And I think, knowing how Rosberg's mind works, because he's very methodical, I can understand why he decided not to make the corner and destroy his tyres. And because he's thinking about the big picture, about finishing the race. So I can understand why he decided to not go for the corner both times and then go for the escape road.
But I think as well with Verstappen coming in, there's this kind of... And people are going on about... You hear the drivers talk about the cars are easy to drive. They're talking about they're easier to drive than like the V10 or V12 powerhouses we had, like with like not as much downforce and a lot of power. Like they were pretty tough, and it was like you had refueling, so the car was always on low fuel, so it was going even faster. But these things are still hard to drive. They are still ridiculously difficult to drive. Like, maybe not as difficult as a few years ago. But, we'll see what happens with Verstappen, but say even with Kvyat, like, people think, oh, he can do it. But Kvyat, that's because he's special. That shows how good he is that he can do that. I mean, Alguersuari struggled to adjust, and look how many other young drivers struggled to adjust. But people like Vettel and... Button and Alonso and Kvyat and Raikkonen, like, they could adjust to it, and that shows how good they are.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you've got to remember is that even though, let's say, the cars are getting slightly easier, they're still adding on new things, new challenges, like tyres.
They get more complicated.
Tyres are, like, last less time, they add on DRS. I mean, that's a massive complication in itself, because, turning with DRS on can easily power you into a slide. Mm-hmm. You had obviously curves last year, that's gone, but now you've got an even more complicated system in ERS. So, it's they say it's easy, but it's not. It really isn't, and it's a difficult job. And I think we have to, as an audience members, appreciate it, because we're not perfect in our jobs. We make mistakes, so do they.
What are you talking about? I make no mistakes. Well, anyway, I think we've spoken about that enough. So let's go into the speculation section, and this week we should be talking about McLaren.
Yes, it's probably going to be one of the most interesting speculations, because nothing's confirmed yet, and of anyone, McLaren have said very openly that they're not deciding yet.
Well, I mean, first of all, let's talk about the position at the end of this year, and this kind of ties into last week with Force India, what we were talking about. Last week, I kind of stated very clearly that I thought McLaren would finish in front of them. I still think that, because I think that the Magnussen penalty in Spa are probably fair. This one, not fair. But even the one in Spa, a bit, could have gone either way, probably. And I just think that McLaren at the moment is faster than the Force India, so I think they'll come out ahead. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, I just think that. So I think they'll finish fifth.
Well, seeing the pace of the McLaren in Italy, I probably agree now that McLaren will finish above Force India.
Now, talking about the drive lineup for next year, like you said, not much is confirmed. What if they always keep talking about Vettel and Alonso. You're Vettel, you are in the second best car at the moment. A car that, for the past 4 years, 4.5 years, I'd say, for the most of 2009 actually, so 4.5, has been the best car. Why would you go to the fifth best team without any guarantee that they're going to be competitive?
Sorry. Again, this leads on to the whole Honda engine thing, I think, and no guarantees that they'll be fast next year, but possible maybe they're trying to get interest in for 2016. Maybe they're thinking the long game in bringing people in.
I think a lot of people say like Hamilton going to Mercedes or whatever, like that seemed like it was a bit of a risk, but at the same time, everyone knew that Mercedes were making steps forward at the time. You could see a progression. Like, they went from like that year they'd won the first race and had their first pole positions, and you could see they were moving forward. With McLaren, we still don't really have evidence of that, to be honest.
No.
So there's no guarantee. And if you're Alonso, yeah, the situation at Ferrari might not be what he wants, but it's better than the situation at McLaren at the moment. So why not, all these guys, why not give it a year and see how Honda does?
Yeah.
So I think it'll be the same lineup.
I think probably, yeah. I think, but judging from how their approach with Magnussen and how they want him to race hard and stuff like that, I don't get the feeling they want him to go. I get the feeling that he's one of them in the pipeline they want to push further.
Well, Magnussen's good. Magnussen's, he's getting a bit of criticism. I don't think anyone denies his speed, and some of his. He may have overstepped the line a tiny bit, but not much. And he's a real quality driver, and they know what McLaren have got to think of is the future. And frankly, even if you get Alonso, you're getting him for a couple more years before he has to go, before he retires. And Vettel, you'll be getting him for longer than that. But look at what's happening with Ricciardo. That's kind of putting Vettel in the shadow a bit. So we'll see. If I was McLaren, I'd be thinking we've got Magnussen. Look at Stoffel Van Voorn in his first season in GP2, and GP2 nowadays it is really hard. It's not like when Hamilton Rosberg raced it. It's hard to do well in your first season, the way the tyres are and the way the cars are. And he's third in the championship, still has a shot at the championship. He's won a bunch of races, won this week in Monza from pole and everything. So he's a real quality guy as well. If I was McLaren, I'm thinking, let's keep Button on for a year, World Championship, still doing a great job, probably going to retire after this year. Let's keep him on. Let's get, make sure Magnussen is really up to it after another year, and then we'll get Van Voorn in, and then guess what? We have two great drivers for however many years with Honda.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be right. Like I said, I'm pretty certain Magnussen's going to stay. I think unless they do any last-minute moves, I'm pretty sure Button will stay at least for another year. But most likely it would be his last year, and then they'll replace him with someone else, whether it be Vettel or Alonso or, like I said, a new driver.
And I think that Magnussen is great, but I think Van Voorn is better. And he's also really good mates with Jensen. Like, they have the same management, and he's kind of like Jensen's protege or whatever. But you talk to Antonio Felix da Costa, who was meant to be the guy who would get the Toro Rosso seat this year. And you talk about it, and he and Magnussen, it was their second year in Formula Renault. And the first race, Van Voorn came to Monza, put it on pole, and ran away with it. And both of them started being like, okay. And Magnussen won that championship in the end, but they both really kind of fear Van Voorn and how good he is. And I think they're both real quality, but I think Van Voorn especially is great. But anyway, we got to talk about the potential position next year.
Well, this is up for speculation. I think it all depends on this Honda engine, because aerodynamics, there's no hint that it's going to get any better.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I just have this feeling that the Honda engine is going to be pretty damn good. I get the feeling they could enter as the second best engine, and I don't know. I don't know where I'm getting this from, but I kind of think McLaren are going to be back to winning races next year, a couple. So I think they're going to be about third or something. And I don't really have any evidence for that. It's just something I have a feeling about.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, I think it will be their error that'll let them down. But I've got a feel. I think you're right about Honda having probably the second quickest engine. I think it's going to be tough for them to have a faster engine than Mercedes, because they already started off with a great one, and it's only going to get better. So yeah, I think they'll probably have the second best engine. It'll be, again, they need to get some serious bodies in on the aero to really fight for like a championship. But winning the odd race here and there is possible.
Indeed, it is.
So yeah, I think potential position possibly 4th, 3rd, I'd say.
Sounds about right to me.
So we shall end this episode with our community question. Do you think it is right to boo drivers? So leave it in the comments below or tweet us. And we shall end this episode here. So thank you very much for watching, and we shall see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.